Tonight, the candidate most polls say has the greatest chance of defeating Donald Trump for the Republican nomination comes to Texas. Plus, what's the best way to ease property taxes in Texas?
We do an exemption like this to $70,000. That's forever.
We're going to focus on property tax relief in a new way.
The leaders of the state House and Senate have a big difference of opinion. And later, a bipartisan push to slash some family care products.
First time we're seeing strong Republican support.
After several past attempts, why new legislation might have a fighting chance of reaching the governor's desk. Capitol Tonight starts right now. Thanks for joining us here on Capitol Tonight. I'm Karina Kling. The 2024 race for president is starting to take shape, and one potential candidate is touring Texas this weekend, feeding speculation he's angling for a White House bid. Republican Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is in Houston tonight for a fundraiser. He heads to Dallas on Saturday for another one. Both are closed to the media. His visit comes as new polling suggests he's already recognizable to most Texas voters. According to a University of Texas at Austin survey, 40% said they had a favorable view of DeSantis, while 38% said they did not. Compare that to former President Donald Trump, who's running again. He had 41% favorability and 48% unfavorables. And Governor Greg Abbott, another potential White House contender, had 47% and 43% unfavorable. We want to bring in our reporter roundtable now. Joining us this week, James Barragon with the Texas Tribune and John Moritz of the USA Today Network. Good to see you both.
Good to be here.
Let's jump right into DeSantis. I mean, James, are you surprised at how well Ron DeSantis is doing in Texas in terms of how his favorables, but just how recognizable he is?
No, I'm not surprised at all. I mean, you see in the Republican primary base that they really like DeSantis and the policies that he's implemented in Florida. The GOP Texas chair, Matt Rinaldi, is a big fan of his. And so it's not surprising. And it's not surprising either that he's visiting important states like Texas. I think there's also plans for him to go to places like Iowa and New Hampshire. So you kind of see the writing on the wall there about what's going to happen.
John, I mean, the speculation surrounding Governor Abbott potentially running for president, I mean, what do you make of how the two are conducting themselves as governors?
Abbott says he's going to focus on Texas, and that's exactly what he's doing, which leads us to believe that either he's not interested in running nationally, or he knows that whoever jumps out first on Trump might go into that Trump slice and dice thing. And so perhaps Abbott just wants to run in DeSantis' wake. If he should fall by the way, the lane becomes open.
I mean, the big question is how do they compete against Trump then in the midst of all of this, especially when Trump is still pretty popular in Texas?
Yeah, I think that obviously Trump is still the person to beat in a Republican primary for the presidency. But, you know, it's a long ways to go until there's actual voting happening in that primary. And so a lot of things can happen. They are each trying to set themselves up by passing as much conservative legislation as they can.
Yeah, John, James, stick around. We're going to talk to you guys about some other issues in just a moment. But first, one of the biggest Republican events of the year is underway this week in suburban Washington, D.C. The Conservative Political Action Conference, known as CPAC, features some Texans as speakers, as well as attendees who traveled across the country. Our Washington reporter, Rena Diamante, spoke to them about the issues that matter most and who they want to run for president.
The sparkle of the Lone Star State was on full display at the Conservative Political Action Conference.
I want it to be noticed, seen, and heard. And here at the CPACs, we've hit all three.
The Texas-sized pride came with a hefty dose of support for former President Donald Trump's bid to retake the White House. The small business owners from Beaumont say they're frustrated by Washington and the economy.
The carefree spending. It's easy to spend other people's dollars, but what happens when our dollars run out?
Roman Garcia is a 21-year-old councilman from Kerrville, outside of San Antonio.
What young conservative doesn't want to be at CPAC, right?
He came here to speak about efforts to recruit the next generation of conservatives.
To me, it's so important to not only get young conservatives involved in recruiting and training them to run for office, but also to hear from everybody other elected officials, other seniority leaders who are here speaking.
One of Thursday's featured speakers, Texas Senator Ted Cruz, picked up where he left off at a Judiciary Committee hearing on Wednesday where he jousted with Attorney General Merrick Garland.
What is happening at the Department of Justice is heartbreaking because it is turned into the political weapon for the Democrats to attack their enemies.
Cruz, who was doing a live recording for his podcast, also called for investigations into Dr. Anthony Fauci, the nation's top infectious disease expert.
Dr. Fauci has done more damage than any bureaucrat in the history of our nation.
President Joe Biden's border policies were repeatedly skewered by speakers, and not surprisingly, by members of the Texas delegation.
The policies welcome them. If we change the policies and we start detaining people and we build a wall, they won't come. We won't have to detain the millions of people that are coming today because they will stop coming.
Congressman Keith Self said it's too early to say whom he'll support in 2024. But like many Texans here, he'd like seeing a Texan in charge.
We absolutely adore Senator Cruz, and he would make a phenomenal president. A Trump-Cruz combination would be outstanding.
Congressman Wesley Hunt of Houston is scheduled to speak Saturday about the construction of the border wall. Notably absent from CPAC is Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida, who is attending fundraisers in Texas instead. In Maryland, Rena Diamante, Capital Tonight.
Turning now to the Texas legislature, where the head of the Senate and the leader of the House are jabbing at each other's priorities. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick and House Speaker Dade Phelan are starkly split on how to deliver property tax relief to Texans. During dueling speeches to a conservative think tank this week, both tried to poke holes in the other's plans.
I know the House is pitching appraisal caps. Appraisal cap, lowering them now will destroy everything we just accomplished.
Because the way I see it is we can talk about homestead exemptions all day long, and that is great. But what does that do for the small business? What's that do for that?
Patrick and Phelan are also split on how to handle so-called school choice and criminal justice reforms. Our reporters are back with us now to weigh in on this potential fight. James Barragon with the Texas Tribune, and next to me, John Moritz with the USA Today Network. John, I'll start with you this time. Any big surprise that the two are jabbing at each other from what we've seen in the past?
Not really surprising. If there's a feud brewing, it's not as intense as past Speaker, Lieutenant Governor feuds. And also, there's no rule that says the Lieutenant Governor and the Speaker need to be on the same page on the same issue each time. Otherwise, why have both? A little tension back and forth is good for the process, and let them spar it out and see who emerges or which ideas emerge.
Yeah, James, I mean, what do you think the signals specifically for property tax relief and kind of the way that the idea that comes to the top, I guess?
Yeah, I think it signals that there's a lot of debate yet to come. It's obviously a priority for every one of the big three, Abbott, Patrick, and Phelan. But the way to achieve that property tax relief is different for each one of them. So not a surprise to see them sparring. I think that they are more open about disliking each other than previous speakers and lieutenant governors, but it's not a surprise, and it is part of the process to sort of hash things out.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's bipartisan support on this idea for property tax relief, but what about school choice? I mean, that seems to be the biggest fight, and now we're kind of, I guess, Phelan never really addressed it, but obviously it's a priority of Patrick's, and the House has been pretty reluctant with school choice in the past.
Yes, the House has always been the hurdle that the voucher or school choice, as they prefer to call it these days, has had to clear. And it's not 100% certain that it's going to clear again. I think one thing unusual is the amount of capital that the governor is willing to spend on that. He's going to rural taxes where the opposition that's not Democratic seems to be rooting, and he's basically trying to win over those lawmakers and those school superintendents and those community leaders, saying, hey, we can all be on the same page here.
Yeah. Do you think that's working, James? I mean, from what we've seen with some of these visits that he's making to some of these places and the lawmakers who are coming out and maybe introducing the governor, but are they saying much about school choice, school vouchers, whatever you want to call it?
I think we're going to have to wait and see to see if it's actually working. I mean, in Corsicana, he was presented by Representative Cody Harris, who represents that district. In Amarillo, I don't believe he had a state representative there. So it's interesting to see, but that is part of the pressure campaign by the governor. He says, we need you, and he's telling parents, we need you out here supporting this. So he's going pretty hard. The lieutenant governor is going pretty hard. He just said that they'll do special session after special session until he get this passed. The speaker is the one playing it closer to the vest. He's saying, I'm willing to entertain some type of school choice, but he hasn't said quite exactly what that looks like, and I think they're going to have to give proposals.
It was clearly not among the priorities
Right.
that Finland has laid out so far.
Could be another very long summer for all of us. We'll see what happens. James, John, thank you very much.
Thank you.
One state lawmaker has been trying to exempt sales tax from certain products women and children need, like maternity clothes and diapers. It's another priority of Speaker Phelan. Our Charlotte Scott reports on why one Texas mom supports the bill and why it might have a fighting chance of passing this legislative session.
Michelle Lennox has her 8-week-old daughter strapped to her chest as she helps a customer check out. At Enlightened Baby in Austin, little ones are taken care of behind the counter and in front of it. Whitney LeBlanc is the store's owner, and she has 3 kids herself.
June will be 10 years for us, and my oldest is 11. So we opened when she was 18 months. She's kind of my original employee.
Helping families is her calling, which is why she supports a bill to cut the sales tax on all types of products, like diapers, baby bottles, and maternity clothing.
Golly, it's kind of crazy for us to tax these essential things.
The bill was filed by Representative Donna Howard. In 3 previous sessions, she filed bills to exempt feminine hygiene products from the sales tax, but none passed. Women in Austin are still paying an extra 8.25% on those products.
Able to save some money here that can be used for the family budget, I think is a pretty important thing to do for our Texas families.
Representative Howard says one estimate shows that this sales tax exemption could save families enough money a year to buy a month's worth of diapers. And many promises have been made by Republicans to take care of Texas families after the near-total abortion ban went into effect last summer.
One of the critiques that Republicans often receive from Democrats is that they don't care enough for children after they're born. And so I think this session we're going to see Republican support for legislation that looks postpartum.
LeBlanc hopes lawmakers pass this legislation so the moms she helps every day can have an extra boost of support.
I just love where this is going. I'm so grateful that people are becoming aware and thinking of ways that we can support each other.
Republicans are also more likely to go for the bill since the state has more than a $32 billion budget surplus. Representative Howard says the comptroller is estimating her bill will cost the state a fraction of that at $200 million. For Capitol Tonight, I'm Charlotte Scott.
Still to come on Capitol Tonight, what tops the list when it comes to what voters want to see get done on education this legislative session? Plus, how families of Uvalde victims continue to push lawmakers to pass stronger gun laws. Welcome back. School safety is the top priority Texas voters want lawmakers to address this legislative session when it comes to education. According to new polling from the University of Texas at Austin, 94% of voters ranked school safety number 1. That was followed by teacher pay and teacher retention at 89%. Curriculum content got 85%, while so-called school choice, or letting parents use tax dollars to send their kids to private schools, got 64%. Governor Abbott also named school safety one of his top priorities this session, but families of Uvalde shooting victims want lawmakers to go further and pass gun control legislation. They rallied at the Capitol this week for stronger gun laws. That includes raising the age to buy an assault weapon from 18 to 21. They have the backing of Democratic State Senator Roland Gutierrez, who represents Uvalde. He joined me this week to discuss his legislation and why he thinks it's important Uvalde families keep coming to the Capitol.
Continuing to advocate is the most important thing so that hopefully somehow we get into the hearts and minds of Republican legislators, let them know that what these people are asking for is common sense gun safety, not trying to take anybody's guns away. They're here so that this never happens to another child again.
What kind of conversations have you had with your Republican colleagues, and have some of these families had with them? I mean, does having them there and just being there in person change the conversation?
Well, I hope that it does. My conversations with my colleagues, a few of them in the Senate, have been susceptible, or agreeable rather, to the idea of an age increase. Okay. They still want to remain nameless, so I think that they're still concerned about the right wing of their party, and I understand that. And I implore people on the right to understand that we're not trying to take your guns away. We're just trying to make your kids safer in school. We don't want to infringe on the Second Amendment. We just don't want an 18-year-old to go buy an AR-15 like he's buying a soda water.
The governor is pushing school safety, and I know that there have been some bipartisan conversations around that. What does that look like? What does that look like for you to be something that would be a good push forward?
Well, we filed a bill to have a cop in every school, an additional DPS trooper in every school. We can't afford it. The Senate has got $600 million for school hardening in the budget. The House has $750 million. TEA, we just discovered, has a white paper for the amount that we're asking for, which is $2 billion a year. That is the number that we need to make our schools a little bit safer, and we need to do that. We have the money.
Yeah.
It's our money, and it should be used in the right way rather than give everybody a box of chicken for a tax break. We should do what's right for our children and make sure that they're safe.
What about arming more teachers? One of your Republican colleagues, as mentioned, wants to expand that program even more. What's your conversation like on that, and what you've heard from teachers themselves? Because we've heard from a lot who say that they don't want that program.
77% of teachers don't want to have to be armed. They don't want to have guns in schools. They don't want to carry guns in schools. It's not their job. They train to teach, not to be law enforcement. Yeah. That's just the end of that argument. But at the end of the day, we had over 376 cops, good guys with guns, that didn't do a damn thing for 77 minutes. I think all that's going to do is make us more dangerous.
Senator, while I have you here, your political future, there's been some chatter about you potentially challenging U.S. Senator Ted Cruz. Will you do that?
Well, look, Karina, I'm focused on this issue right now and getting through this session. That is the most important thing. This issue is something that I will talk about in public office for the rest of my life. I have seen hundreds of hours of body cam footage. I've seen children with their faces shot off. There is no horror like this. I will never stop talking about it until we can get something done in this space. And so that's the only thing I'm focused on.
Let's take a look now at some of the other political stories making headlines across Texas. Texas A&M officials directed all university agencies to remove diversity statements from their employment and admissions practices. This comes after Governor Abbott's office sent a letter warning Texas universities that hiring policies that are not based solely on merit violate state and federal law. The University of Texas system put a pause on its DEI policies last week. San Antonio area Republican Congressman Tony Gonzalez could be censured by the Texas GOP after breaking with the party on some legislation. Gonzalez is under scrutiny for rejecting a border security plan proposed by fellow Texas Republican Chip Roy. The censure proposal also mentions his support for a bill defending same-sex marriage and for the bipartisan gun law that passed last year. State party officials will vote on whether to consider a censure on Saturday. And it's now legal to sell, buy, and own bump stocks in Texas. That's because regulators did not appeal a court ruling that struck down the federal ban on the devices, which allows semi-automatic rifles to fire multiple bullets with one pull of the trigger. Bump stocks are still illegal in most states, but they are allowed in Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. Federal regulators could try to take the fight to the Supreme Court. Still to come on Capitol tonight, a Texas judge is expected to decide an abortion pill lawsuit soon, what it could mean for access. Activists on both sides of the abortion issue are waiting for a Texas judge's ruling that could revoke FDA approval of a common abortion medication. The decision could take this pill off the market after more than 20 years. Amber Hughes shows us more about the drug up for debate.
Medication Outpatient abortions account for more than half of all abortions in the U.S. Soon, that option may no longer be available.
This is a community space for anyone that is a part of San Antonio.
The Liberation Center is the hub for organizers like Tori Ramirez. Women's rights, one of the many issues supported by the Party of Socialism and Liberation.
Reproductive justice activists have been warning us for years what was going to happen because we didn't have any other sort of protections than Roe.
Texas is one of the 18 states to ban abortions. Tori says the fear of complications during pregnancy that may require the banned procedure may give women pause.
I've had people very close to me that were trying to go ahead and get pregnant, but once this abortion ban passed, they're not even trying to get pregnant anymore.
After nearly 50 years of federal abortion protections, last summer Roe v. Wade was overturned. And now the fate of the abortion pill mifepristone is the target of a lawsuit filed against the FDA.
The physicians that we work with feel that women and girls will be better taken care of in this country if this drug is removed from the market.
Dr. Christina Francis serves as the American Association of Pro-Life Obstetricians and Gynecologists CEO. Their legal counsel says they've been challenging the FDA's approval of the abortion pill for 14 years prior to the lawsuit.
It failed America's women and girls by approving chemical abortion drugs and has repeatedly failed the American public by taking away basic safeguards for women and girls who do take these drugs.
Dr. Francis says there is no longer a requirement for women to be screened prior to taking the abortion pill. And weekly, they see women come to the ER with complications.
We know that the complication rates related to these drugs increase exponentially as the pregnancy progresses.
Tori wishes there was more focus on health care overall instead of this pill.
The government needs to stay out of women's business. Leave it up to the people whether or not they want to get abortion.
Regardless of where they stand on the issue of abortion, women and girls deserve better health care than this. They deserve the same measure of safety testing as any other drug.
And that was Amber Hughes reporting. That is going to do it for this edition of Capital Tonight. We're back on Monday with the latest in Texas politics. Until then, thanks for watching. Have a great weekend.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel, and for more refreshing stories about your community, click the subscribe button right over here. You can also download our Spectrum News app to get live news coverage, weather alerts, and more wherever you are. And don't forget to tune in to Channel 55 on Dish and DirecTV for live local reporting every single day. We'll see you then.